exciting project called Youthopia. And this is actually because of my journey with Bye Bye Plastic Bags, speaking to over 1 million students around the world about how young got from other students around the world. And maybe some of you are thinking, how can I create change? How can I build a team? How can I speak in public? How can I engage with politicians and actually get an outcome? All of these critical questions Youthopia tries to answer with other young people, and that's here my background this morning, through programs, master classes, workshops, and all sorts of different things. So my space and energy right now is going all towards youth empowerment through peer-to-peer education. And of course, Bigger Than Us is a nice opening of conversation, getting people to be aware through the power of film and storytelling. And Youthopia then answers many of the questions that come up after watching the film.
Thank you for that. I really do thank you for that, because I was thinking while watching the movie that we just, I mean, we're not over, of course, we're not over the pandemic yet, but we're getting out of this like a year and a half of complete shutdown, and we, you know, living within our own homes and with the anxiety that comes out from it. And then the news cycle media and the news and the social media and everything on our timelines and cell phones is all about the mysteries that are in the world, right? And it's like this tragedy porn that is not even fair representation of what's really going on in the world. So eventually I got tired from it, because it was just like a pure anxiety source, and I started to look for solutions, paths of change.
Yeah.
Right, paths of transformation towards being okay, and examples of what was actually happening, or who was doing something that could change everything that was going on in the world that was wrong, and that we were being shown that over and over and over again. So is it okay to guess that doing this documentary had something to do with that, with offering a peek of what actually is possible to better the world?
Yes, Bigger Than Us shows what is possible, right? And it's definitely, Eduardo, what you were saying, that leadership, leading by example, just not waiting for permission, not waiting until we're older, but implementing the change we know needs to happen. And it's coming from young people all around the world. We're getting involved at a younger and younger age. I'm 20 years old now, but I started when I was 12. Today, 10-year-olds, 8-year-olds are all getting involved because we know that we do not have the luxury of time to wait for change. And I think that this is also kind of to what you were speaking about, that anxiety and that frustration, and especially what happened in 2020 and still now with the pandemic and the many increases of natural disasters. We're suddenly starting to understand that this is just the beginning. If we do not change, we will be seeing many more pandemics, many more natural disasters, floods, forest fires, tidal waves, all of these intense natural changes. It's starting to happen. And we've already been very impacted here in Indonesia with all these sorts of different things, but suddenly all across Europe and all across America, people are starting to have these intimate, how do you say, I don't know how to say it in a way where it's like not an intimate experience, but they're starting to see it firsthand. They're starting to experience it themselves. And I think that that's when action and realization starts to kick in.
I love that. And we're here joined today by a bunch of students, university students from Mexico. We're all from, like, well, I'm not a student, but everybody here studies like communication and entertainment businesses, film, right? And so before moving forward with the whole project and the whole beautiful content of the documentary, I'd like to ask you how this documentary came to be. Who is producing it? Did they find you? Did you look for them?
It was being at the right place at the right moment. I met with the director, Flor Vasseur, when I was 14, 15 years old, and we filmed a documentary together about Bye Bye Plastic Bags. So the first organization that I worked for and with. And we just clicked. She understood me, like not many, producers who just come to take the shot, to take the story, and then leave again. There was a conversation. There was a lot of honest listening and honest debates and questioning. And I think that relationship, very much on a personal level first, is what allowed me to get into Bigger Than Us, and was also at the right time in both of our lives, where we were starting to recognize that, hey, there's maybe more young people out there. That's when I started Youthtopia. It's when Flora started to get questions from her son, about what is she doing to make the world a better place. And, all of these moments kind of led us to the reality of Bigger Than Us. And it's become such a bigger project, including 6 other young change makers and their voices. It has drawn the attention and the help of Dennis Karat and Marion Cotillard to really bring this documentary to life. But it has been a journey, yeah.
Beautiful. And please tell me what keeps you going, right? Because you've been doing this since you were 12, now you're 20, right? So that's 8 years. What fuels you up? What makes you want to keep going? I think from the outside, it could look exhausting almost.
Oh, sorry, 1 second. Let me, someone is trying to call me.
It's okay.
Sorry. Okay. What keeps me going? Many things. The best example that I could give you is what I have behind me. This is our Circle of Youth wall. These are other young people that I get to work with on a daily basis at Youthtopia. And these are young people all around the world. And these Circle of Youth members are part of a network where we build programs together, where we create masterclasses and workshops. We have mentoring. And it's really empowering to see, one, we're not alone. And secondly, that change is possible and change is already happening. It's led by grassroots activists, led by youth activists, and we're clear on the vision of change. And I think that is what really allows me to wake up every morning and say, okay, let's get some work done.
I love that. And I wanted to ask you a little bit about all the other characters in the film, which were very inspiring and eye-opening on their own and their own stories, right? And I wanted to start with Mohammed, who talks about how he keeps going because he's working the schools. He keeps going with his work in the schools he's doing with the kids, and how that, because that is his full identity, right? He mentions it being his work, his personality, his memories, everything is about it, and sort of his safe space as well. So he doesn't know who he is without it. And as much as I love to hear that, it also sort of breaks my heart a little bit. And I want to know, there's something about this that reminds me of this like huge way that capitalism puts on us to keep on being productive, right? And therefore have that being like keep on being productive, to keep on doing, and then have that been the equivalent to like the value we have for the system, and sometimes in our eyes too, since we've internalized it, right? So I understand there are fundamental differences, but do you think there's still some of that enemy internalized in the fights we're trying to make towards defeating it?
Well, I guess there are two sides of the story, like always. But I think one thing that you mentioned, which I think is really interesting, is to talk about the value system of today's world, right? We oftentimes prioritize a lot of materialistic things or numbers versus actual meaningful interactions with one another. But what I saw when I met Mohammed, Memory, Renee, Mary, all of them, is that what drives us in the work that we do is a lot of the love and the dedication with the community that we build around us. Because again, it's really leading by example. It's not waiting for permission.
to the Valley government too, and
Yeah.
I think that's right. And then he's doing all of this. He uses music and the knowledge of his heritage and shares this beautiful ideology that environment is part of ourselves as well. Mm, but then again, he seems so positive, and I think some of that has to do with how close he is to his community, right, and how much he belongs to it, and how much he
Yeah.
goes back to his like cultural heritage. However, the fight and talking specifically about fracking and all of the things going on in Colorado, mm, his fight seems a lot. It seems like we're too many of us fighting against too many, too few people, right? Just too few people, but very, very powerful, who are like in charge of so much, and this replicates in many of the stories. I think it's with Winnie, where you talk about how 80% of the agriculture, more than 80% of the agricultural land in the world is owned by like something like 7 or 8% of agricultural land owners in the world. Uh, so should we be talking with them about this, or should we be recruiting more people? How do we move forward and upwards, which I think is super important too?
Yeah. I love this question because that's what I'm trying to create, that movement and that momentum with Utopia, and showing that there's not only one solution or one person or one organization that will be able to solve all of the problems that we're facing today. It's about creating that momentum, that movement. And where I believe very strongly in is that young people can accelerate that change. So for me, it is a combination of what you are saying. Do we engage with those 1%? Do we engage with those policymakers and those entrepreneurs on a larger level? Yes, we absolutely must. But it can't be the only interaction that we have. We have to already show, because I think sometimes what maybe is also needed, and something that I've learned over the last 8 years of bioplastic bags, is that, a lot of the times political leaders, business leaders are willing and are interested in making a change. But there is that next step that we need to take from willing and interested and inspired to really taking action and implementing change. And that is a bridge that young people can connect. That is where community leaders, indigenous leaders, youth leaders are leading by example and implementing the solutions, building a pilot village, building a track record, and saying it's possible. We've done it here. And I think we have to acknowledge that we cannot do it alone, that we need to create collaborations. That's one thing that I see in the last, again, evolution of being 12 to 20 years old. Collaboration is the only way we will move forward. And it's not only collaborations with those that you find in the same field or can agree with, and everybody's saying, oh, great work, great work, great work. No, it's collaborations with those that you wouldn't expect to collaborate with. It's bringing on board all different people and sectors onto the same table and having an honest, open conversation to then build and implement tangible solutions that everyone involved has to do.
I want to ask you a question that after that answer feels sort of like your answer feels sort of obvious now, but I want to make it anyway because I want to hear what you have to say about it. There's this moment where you ask Memory, who is a huge example that change is possible, who is probably burnt out, and you ask her if she takes care of everyone around her, who takes care of her, and she really doesn't know what to answer to that. May I ask you who takes care of you? And I know you have a tribe. I see it behind you, but but you started at 12, right? So how did it start for you? Who was taking care of you? And I know I'm guessing the obvious answer is your parents, but how did that happen?
Yeah, I started the first movement bioplastic bags with my sister, my best friend. And in that space, in that spirit, it's again really important for any of you that are watching this that want to get started. Make sure you are not alone. Having my sister start the movement of bioplastic bags with me, we were, growing like this, and we both had different energies that we contributed to the movement. Today, who takes care of me, as you mentioned, the tribe, the source of energy that I have, the team around me, but also really important is having maybe if the support doesn't come from your family, like your parents or siblings, try and find it in your school. Who can in your school support you? Is it a teacher? It just needs to be 1 or 2 extra people that you can count on as your support system. And that's really, really important. I'm really grateful to have a family that supports me and that always believes and challenges my great ideas. My sister is a great source of inspiration. And I happen to have a boyfriend as well who is in the space of change making. So that makes it very helpful as well.
I love it. Well, I could keep on going and asking so many questions that I prepared, but I think it's the right time to open up the conversation to anyone else who wants to join in, jump in, ask questions. Chicos, si tienen dudas, si quieren hacer preguntas, ahora es cuando. I'm not sure how this works. I think you can, I don't know if you can open your mics. If you can do it, I don't know, raise your hand, whatever. If you're here, if you have a question, do it. Chicos, si no se sienten cómodos hablando inglés, pueden hacerlo en español y yo puedo traducir. If you do not feel comfortable speaking English, you can ask the question in Spanish and I'll translate for you.
Yeah, I have a question.
I'd love it if you, Carlos, si prendes tu cámara estaría increíble.
Sí.
Hi.
Hi, Melati. So my question is this: the times that you had like people telling you that you couldn't make it, or all that promising, what did you do, or how did you manage to handle to keep going, to never give up and like stay on your path?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest, thanks Carlos for your question. I think one of the biggest lessons as well in terms of like taking criticism or taking, feedback is the hardest lesson was probably to listen and to, stay there and to finish the conversation, to hear what the other side and what the other perspective was. At first, that was the hardest thing to do. I couldn't, because I was like, how can they not think that that's the right thing to do? Like, we have to do it like this. And at the end of the day, as I grew older as well, I understood the importance of understanding that other perspective in order to help change their narrative through storytelling, through collaborations. And I think, again, also being okay with taking a step back for a second, after you've had a conversation that's maybe tougher than you wanted, taking a moment for yourself to remind you why you do what you do. And I think that's always a common thing that you'll hear many young change makers saying, is that as long as you are comfortable and understand your why, you'll be able to bounce back. And that comes also from the very beginning. Before you start, be clear with your intentions. Why are you getting started? Why are you focusing on this issue and not that issue? Why are you tackling the problem like this and not like this? It's because you, as yourself, are feeling confident that this is your mission, this is your way to contribute. So when you're getting feedback, when you're getting criticism, welcome it with open arms, digest it, understand it. Maybe there's a way where you can help that other person change their perspective of viewing it. Maybe it's because they're not feeling comfortable or confident or have access to the solution. It's always really important to listen to the other side and then help them through taking them to another perspective. But yeah, for me, it's really been that process of seeing it as a not personal attack, which took a long time for me to get used to. But it's not a personal attack. It's more, okay, how can we make sure that everybody is on the same page? And then, of course, there's always a walk on the beach or a walk through the rice fields to clear your head.
Thanks a lot for answering me.
Gracias, Carlos. Anyone else has a question?
Yo tengo algunas preguntas.
Vamos con Marisela y luego con Arturo Alejandro. Prendan su cámara, chicos, para conocerles la cara.
Hi, Melati. How are you?
Hi, I'm good.
I saw your documentary, and I was quite shocked by what happened in each community. So, I have a deep admiration for your work. So, my question for you is, so what was your biggest challenge?
Okay. Thank you, Maricela, for the big question. Over the last 8 years, I think it's nearing almost 9 years now. There have been a lot of challenges. There have been a lot of, things to celebrate, things to achieve, but there have also been a lot of lows. I think for me, there's a different challenge that I always talk about, but I think today a challenge that I'd like to share is a little bit on the topic of burnout, because we heard about that anxiety, that frustrations. I feel it's relevant as well to the generation and the time that we're living in right now. But I think the biggest challenge is that burnout on an early age, as well as the frustration when change isn't happening fast enough, when you work very hard and you attend many meetings, attend many conferences, hear beautiful words, but never see it translated to action. It's very difficult to find the willpower to keep on going. And that's where, again, that was really the biggest challenge. And then, add that with a lot of teenage hormones, high school drama, friends, all of that, right? Starting at 12 years old to where I am today, that long-term motivation, not only for me, but for the team members around us, for our volunteers, to make sure that the community around us stayed and felt that same determination to achieve change. I think that was always an ongoing challenge that we had over the years. The way we combated that, or the way we kind of overcame that challenge, was by making sure that we didn't forget to have fun. And I think that sometimes, and especially also in the movie, there's a lot of big topics that we cover. And it's often, the majority of it, I feel, is a very serious tone, because it's a lot of serious topics. But we can be serious about change and not forget to have fun as well. So, creating educational workshops after a surfing competition on the beach, we would do a cleanup. We would go into a community and we would host a socialization game before coming into the classrooms, or before going and talking with the parents. So making sure that we are involving everybody so they feel included in the movement, with their skill set and their interests included.
If I may to follow up on that, just a second, Arturo, Alejandro, for your question. I love that, Melati. I love that you're saying that, because then that sort of builds up on this. That feels super anti-capitalist, right? Anti-capitalist, because yes, looking for fun and to remember to have a life and not just saving a bunch of them. It's a basic human need. So I think it's important. I don't know what you think, that we talk about this as well, right? About one of the things I wanted to ask you was, how do we keep going? What is it? What can people do if it's not becoming full-time activists, right? How do we make this sort of life that looks for and thrives towards making this world much better, without losing track of who we are and who we can be and how we can lean into joy, right?
I also think it's a different perspective shift that we might need. Full-time change maker is how I introduce myself, because for me, what I do in any small way or big way, it's trying to contribute to change. Super simple, individual action. I got coffee this morning and I went to the local store on the side of the road and I got coffee in my own steel cup. Tiny contribution, but I still consider that as an act, as me being a change maker. It's aligned with who I am. Then I will have, after this, a meeting with government to address how we can change the education curriculum. That's a slightly bigger tone than getting a cup, right? But there are many different ways and many different approaches to being a change maker, to being an activist. You can define it however you would like. And I think that that's also really important that Youthtopia is trying to address, is that being a change maker, you don't have to have a large platform. You don't have to have an X amount of social media followers. You don't have to be internationally renowned. You don't have to create a change on a countrywide level. What about your village? What about your community? And I think that that's really important in terms of how we define change making, that it is not full time if it doesn't feel right. You can contribute as much or as little as you want. We all have a role to play.
Thank you. I love that. Arturo, vas.
Hi, Melati.
Hello.
Eduardo, ¿me puedes ayudar con la traducción? Es que sí.
Yeah, I'll translate for him.
Gracias. ¿Cómo la pandemia ha acelerado o ha atrasado el cambio del movimiento?
He'd like to know how has the pandemic changed or maybe delayed the progress of this movement?
Yes, great question. Thank you, Arturo. I'll speak in so that you can translate back, or how would?
I understand. I understand.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, with the pandemic, a lot has changed for many industries, many sectors, but also for many change makers. Our work is usually involved on being on the ground, in front of students, in front of people, to create workshops and education. And then we had to change that to being offline, right? Which meant that we didn't have that interaction, we didn't have that engagement to far away communities. And so slowly but surely, we're hoping to bring that back, especially here on the island of Bali. But internationally, in terms of the plastic movement, COVID-19 has also almost has become a huge setback for the single-use plastic industry, because now everybody wants single-use plastic. Whereas 2 years ago, before COVID started, we were slowly starting to make an impact on single-use plastics, and think about the throwaway masks and everything like that, and the gloves and the face shields. That's all made out of plastic. And so there is a huge setback, but that's even why now is more important to make sure that we're center of attention talking about these issues, because the pandemic doesn't mean that these issues are away, right? If we don't change, is what I said earlier, if we don't change, there will only be more pandemics, more crises, more natural disasters happening on a regular basis. So I think it's very much a communication crisis as well, what we're experiencing at the moment, where we need to make sure that everybody's on the same narrative and aware that business as usual just cannot continue.
Thank you. We have a line for questions. We go with Aranza, then Jimena, then Jocelyn, and then Carlos Colina. Go ahead, Aranza, dale.
Hola. Hi.
Oh. Hi, hello.
Aranza first, then Jimena.
Oh, sorry.
Well, I'm gonna ask you, I think it's a very complicated work. Was it difficult to get close to people and have them trust you?
Can you repeat that question one more time? Sorry, your microphone was a bit far.
Yes. Was it difficult to get close to people and have them trust you?
Do you mean like in terms of government or business leaders or young people in general?
In general.
Yeah, I think
movie.
Yeah, well, thank you, Aranza, for the question. I think for us, building that momentum came very naturally. And I think the reason why it got so big when it was for two reasons. One, the timing was, people were ready and waiting for this change, And secondly, the intention and the authenticity of our movement was clear. Everybody could see a group of young people who were not doing it for their ego, who are not doing it for money, who are not doing it for political gain. But the intention was to protect and to preserve the beauty of our island. The intention was clear and the timing was right. And for me, that is what is the key elements that you need in order to build community, to gain the trust. And it's of course also working very hard to walk your talk, right? You can say that you want something, but then not follow up. And with Bye Bye Plastic Bags and with Utopia, a lot of energy, a lot of time, a lot of attention went into our walking our talk. So I think that that's really important if you want to build those relationships and build those community around you. And it also takes a lot of time. So to give you an idea, for our community socializations that we would do, we would spend hours before school started and hours again after school started, every day and every weekend with communities so that they understand. So you take them through education, you take them through implementing solutions, and you show them the way. So I think that this is really important, that you're building those relationships on a personal level as well.
Thank you so much.
Jimena, then Jocelyn.
Hi, Melody.
Hello.
I just want to ask you about, this concept of digital nomads. So do you think if you're living in that way, if it's possible, to be an activist, or if it's possible to be sustainable, this new form of life that many people are trying out, just not staying in your city, but I don't know if this type of living cannot be sustainable, or cannot be to be an activist, because you're not engaging in a place. You're moving, maybe I'm traveling and around my country, or traveling in another country. So I would like if you already heard about this concept, or what do you think about it, if it's possible to be an activist?
Yeah, very interesting question, Jimena. Thank you very much. It's one of the first questions that I never get asked. So I will try and answer with mostly my opinion, because I'm not, I haven't really studied or looked into it, but I'm very familiar with digital nomads. I live on Bali, and there are many digital nomads here. And I think, one of the key elements, obviously flying is one of the worst ways to contribute to the climate crisis. So there's always that. And if one thing is for sure with the pandemic and everybody going online and tuning in like this, it shows that, you don't always have to fly to sit in front of a person to create meaningful connections like we're doing now. But I think that in order for digital nomads, they have a certain skill set that they could contribute to the local community that they are there for. Very much someone that is, especially from my own experience with Bye Bye Plastic Bags, we were always looking for help in skill sets. For example, being a youth group, we didn't know how to set up a website. We didn't know how to raise funds. We didn't know how to read laws and regulations. And a lot of this knowledge and these skill sets are from people traveling around the world, coming, wanting to help. And yes, it is a very limited time that they're able to allocate. But if it is genuine, if it is helpful, and it's something that your organization needs, I feel like that's one way that these nomads can help. I don't think it is a full-time way of helping the environment or the community around you if you are not creating those genuine relationships on the long term. I'm not sure if that answers your question entirely, but again, there are many ways that you can be a change maker. And I know a lot of these digital nomads use their platforms to spread awareness. So that I think is key. And in that way, I hope that they're also sharing a lot of the stories from the local areas that they visit and amplify that to a global audience.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. You're on, yeah.
Adelante.
Hello. So I wanted to ask you, what is the best way to inform ourselves about what can we do? Because there is a lot of misinformation and fake news, and sometimes I don't know what to follow or what to do, because there's people that says that plastic bags are not bad if you recycle them well, but I don't know where to get the right information.
Yeah. This is always, sorry, someone's at the door. Let me quickly.
Oye, Eduardo, te quería preguntar que si puedo hacer una pregunta después. Jiji.
Sí, Carlos, sí.
Sorry. Can I quickly answer that question?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. There was someone at the door and I had to quickly open it for them. But thank you, Jocelyn, for your question. It's really important, especially because right now, and I was talking about that communication crisis, there's so much information, especially in the world that we're living in right now. There are so many different channels and so much information that it can get really confusing and it's hard to filter. So I would suggest looking at trusted sources. One of my favorite platforms to look at is always TED Talks. I love listening to experts in the field that are vetted and that are on a platform trusted, such as TED. I love listening to podcasts. Yesterday, I was listening to Extinction Rebellion. They have this climate change for beginners sort of podcast, which is always a nice refresher, 5 minutes episodes. And I think it's really important to find experts as well in your local field or in your local areas. Try and find people who are in that field. Talk to people who are picking up the waste. I don't know, like here in Bali and in Indonesia, we have a formal waste sector and an informal waste sector. Try and get as much perspective as you can from an established institution to those that are picking up the items that nobody wants to have. And as long as you're aware that this is a learning journey, you're going to be okay. Because I think oftentimes what we're afraid of is saying the wrong thing or learning something, and then 2 weeks later someone's like, that's not true. It's going to happen. It's happened to me. It's a learning process. There's so much information always evolving. We're discovering new things on a daily basis, but it's important that you're staying as up to date as possible. So doing the research, starting those conversations, with all those around you and who you have access to, because it's important to follow what's happening on a global standpoint, but also locally, staying up to and aware of what's happening in the area around you. So I would just say mostly through research and through trusted sources like TED or through different channels, and as well focusing on conversations and the research that you can get from those on the ground.
Thank you.
Gracias. Carlos, you go.
Hi again. So this question now. So I'm from Mexico, and after seeing what Mohammed and Rene did in their respective countries, I wanted to ask you if by speaking to them or like experiencing yourself some situations, Mexico is a really dangerous place, like to speak loudly. We usually keep a low profile because we're afraid that if we raise our voice too high, I don't know, something's bad going to happen, you know? So I wanted to ask you if talking to Mohammed or Rene about their own situations in Brazil, and I don't remember the other country from Mohammed, but what can you like advise Mexicans to do against like the fear that we have to go through, like to open that barrier to well, like start speaking for us and like start doing an impact?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. Thank you so much for that, Carlos, because for me as well, it was kind of a glass ceiling that I broke through, because it's again, recognizing privilege, I have a lot of privilege in the sense that I'm able to speak my mind, speak freely, and speak up as loud as I want. But when I met Renee and Mohammed and the stories that they were telling me, it was a totally new world and a new space. And I recognize that that is for many. I think something that I learned from Renee is actually what he did. He armored himself with media attention and with endorsements from large organizations and companies, so that, you know, he said to me, like, that's one way where he kind of feels invincible, in a way where he already has that backup if anything were to happen, that is there. Mohammed, on the other hand, is total opposite kind of take on media. You meet Mohammed, he's like, nah, I'm not giving an interview, or like, he's very much more into having those one-on-one conversations on a low profile. I think the most important thing, though, for me is actually in line with Mo in different ways and Renee in different ways. But at the end of the day, it's about creating that community around you, because many voices is more stronger than one voice. And I think that that's always important to keep in mind. You know, I said it before in a slightly different context, you know, saying like not one person is able to create change. You know, you can't do it on your own. But on this, in this tone, for this answer, for the question, it's the power in the numbers. You know, it's harder to ignore. It's harder to move aside if you're with the many. And I think that that's also the power in momentum, and the power is in the people. So I think before starting anything, especially in a country like Mexico, it's kind of trying to create alliances and build those numbers. If you're coming up with a campaign to protest against XYZ, you would have to show like the numbers and the names behind real people and real institutions to back up your claim, saying it's not one person, it's all of us. You know, and I think that that's really, never underestimate the power that that can lead to.
Thanks again for answering me.
We have a question from Sang.
Hi.
Hello.
I'm Samantha, actually. I'm sorry. It's just a mistake with the name. But anyways, I wanted to ask you, how do you find this, all these stories? Like, you have so many stories behind you on the wall, but how do you pick them? How do you know how to, like, they really have to listen to all these stories. People had to listen to these ones. How, I feel like it's a challenge. Like, you want people to know all those stories, but you have like so few time, so less time to just talk about some few.
Well, I would definitely, yeah, thanks Samantha for your question. I think it's true, there's so many of us, right? And how do we make sure that all of these stories reach the platform, reach the height that they deserve? At Utopia, I highly recommend anyone to check us out. It's a learning platform. So actually what we're doing is connecting all of these young change makers with each other and with all of you who are interested in starting their journey as a change maker. How do you speak in public? All those questions that I shared earlier. But in terms of sharing their stories out into the world, we're also hosting, like, every week we have a different topic that we address. And you know, myself as an individual, I'm not interested in all the topics that need to be paid attention to, but I am interested in this and in that and in this. So what's also really interesting is to see which crowds gravitate to which stories. And it's also really okay to kind of build your interest on one or two topics. You can't solve all the world's problems, right? It's good to be aware about them and to know about them, but you don't have to become experts about them. So I would also recommend for yourself as well, breaking down what you're interested in, which topics, which SDGs, which problems do you feel like you want to be part of solving? One or two or three, and then start diving deeper into that. And then that's also where, you know, a lot of these Circle of Youth members, even though they have very different fields of interests, every now and then they'll engage and they'll learn from each other in their very different fields. But it's not a daily thing. They're not experts of each other, and that's okay.
Do you want me to jump in?
Wait, sorry. Perfect.
Thank you
I think
so
I have
much.
time, yeah, for maybe one last question, and then I have to wrap up and leave you all. But thanks, Samantha, for that last question.
No, thanks to you.
Do we have one more question?
Yes, we can have one more question, and then I have to leave.
Okay, if nobody else has one more question, I'd like to make the last one then. Are we sure no one else wants to make this last question? Okay, so Melati, what is it that you mentioned with a question earlier that that was the kind of question that you never got asked? So what kind of question you never get asked that you wish you got, so you could tell us? I don't know, what is it you want to tell us that maybe you didn't get the chance to do it in the documentary, and how can we move forward? And also, would you repeat for us the name of the learning platform you said that we should check out just to register it?
Sure. I'll put it in the chat, but it's thanks for that question, Eduardo. For me, it's maybe not so much a question, but I wish I could speak always more on the topic of education. Oh, oh no. Wait, my okay. I wish I could speak more on the topic of education. Oftentimes, I think people still think I'm 12 years old and focusing on plastic bags. But I'm 20 years old and I am focusing on youth empowerment through education. It's one of the things I wish was included in the documentary. But with the new project Youthtopia, I'm really focusing and kind of trying to see what radical change do we need to have in our classrooms? Because I believe that change can start in the classrooms if only what is happening outside in the world is also happening inside the classrooms, because connecting those bridges is really important and key to getting more young people mobilized. So yeah, I'm not sure if that's one question embodied where I am focusing on now, and always love to talk about the change that we need to see in the education industries, meaning at least once a week, 1 hour on the topics of climate crisis, 17 SDGs, and anything sustainable innovation.
Well, thank you so much for that. And thank you to everyone else who joined today. I know tonight. I know it's an atypical hour to have a conversation like this, but I wanted to thank you for joining in, for making the effort. I wanted to thank you for watching the film. I'm sure it's gonna premiere soon, so more people can watch it, and so we can share it with everybody in, with our friends. I'm not as young as you are. I'm not as young as many of you who are here. I'm 27 years old, but I think of myself as a young person. And I want to thank you, Melati, for mobilizing us and encouraging us to do this. And I know we'll stay tuned, and I know we'll figure out ways to keep on educate our youth and do our part here in Mexico as well.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much. I was really awesome questions, and I hope I answered them well. And if you have any other follow-up questions that I wasn't able to reach, please follow on Instagram and DM me. I'll try and get to them. And if not, Eduardo, you have our email, and you're more than welcome to share that with those that were here today.
Muchas gracias. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank
bye,
you.
everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.